The film is based on true events. Vietnam War veteran Max Erikson noticed an Asian-looking girl on a trolley bus and mentally drifted back to 1966, a time he would rather forget. Sergeant Tony Meserve ordered 2 privates to insert mines on the flanks. Hatcher suggested that one of the Viet Cong tunnels might be directly beneath them. A green recruit thought he saw the enemy and opened fire into the bushes. Because of that, the squad was detected and came under mortar fire. During the retreat, Max fell through the ground. There really was a tunnel below, where Vietnamese soldiers were crawling around. The private called for help, but the first to hear him was an enemy soldier. He was already crawling toward Max with a knife between his teeth, ready to kill the American. Finally, the sergeant saw Max stuck in the ground. He managed to save him at the last moment. Immediately after, they had to return fire at a Vietnamese soldier hiding in a tree. The sergeant miraculously noticed a guy climbing out of a hole and took him out. In the morning, the squad entered a small village. Max said he'd only been there for 3 weeks. According to Brownie, by the 2nd month you stop caring about what's happening around you or the crazy things you're doing yourself. The rookie gave some chocolate to the kids, and they gave him a fruit in return. The sergeant advised him not to eat anything given by the locals. The young soldier defended himself, saying he only took the food out of politeness. This made the veterans laugh and get angry. They burned down these villages. Well then, polite Max can just say, "Well, excuse me." The soldiers tried to find out if there were any Viet Cong in the village, since it was full of only women and old men. The rookie went off to explore the local gardening techniques. Brownie advised him not to do anything stupid and to stick with the squad if he wanted to return to his wife and kid. Brownie was saying that he and the sergeant would be discharged soon, but then he was hit by a burst of automatic gunfire.
And leave Freedom's frontier.
The gunfire is coming from the bushes across the river. At the same time, a farmer from behind threw a grenade at the Americans, and Max miraculously hit it with his underbarrel grenade launcher. Because of a neck wound, Brownie was losing a lot of blood. A helicopter arrived right away to evacuate him. Brownie was the sergeant's old combat buddy, and the sergeant struggled to hold back tears. The squad returned to the military base. The soldiers were drinking beer and relaxing, everyone except the sergeant, who remained serious and tense. He gave the squad good news. Tomorrow, they would head out on a reconnaissance mission. Max asked the sergeant, "What about Brownie?" "Brownie's dead," he answered. Corporal Clark said he hated this country. He wanted to blow it all to hell. After Brownie's death, the rookies didn't even feel like fighting anymore. They were always retreating anyway. In the evening, the squad wanted to head into town to have some fun and pick up girls from a brothel. But at the checkpoint, the soldiers were turned back. For some reason, they weren't allowed into town that day. The guys returned to the barracks and got drunk. The sergeant introduced them to Private Diaz, who would replace Brownie. They would move out at dawn. Their mission was to locate bunkers and tunnels that weren't marked on the map. Also, they would head out an hour earlier to stop by a nearby village and find themselves a girl to boost morale. Max couldn't believe the sergeant was seriously planning to abduct a girl, especially with just 1 month left before discharge. Why take that kind of risk?
I mean, some broad in your pack. You see how nuts that sounds? That'll never happen, GI.
But even before sunrise, we see the squad moving through the village, peeking into every hut where local villagers were still peacefully asleep. In one of the huts, they found 2 sisters. They covered both of their mouths, but the muffled screams still woke the whole village. This was happening just 10 meters from Max, and he couldn't do anything to stop it. Worse yet, the privates were stationed outside the house to keep the other villagers away. Judging by the soldiers' reactions, Max was the only one shocked by what he had just witnessed. One of the girls was dragged out of the hut. Her mother tried to hand her a scarf, but that bastard Clark shoved it into the poor girl's mouth. "I'm sorry," Max said in a hoarse voice. They tied the girl's hands and forced her to walk with the squad. Max approached the sergeant to talk about the kidnapped girl, but he was immediately sent on watch duty with Hatcher. The psycho wondered why they hadn't done this kind of thing before. "We could be like Genghis Khan."
Hatcher, this is nuts.
It ain't nuts. It's what armies do.
Ah, we ain't Genghis Khan,
Hey,
man.
you're the one who's nuts, man.
During a break, Clark started hitting on the captive girl. Diaz admitted to Max that he didn't want to rape her. Our protagonist also asked him not to do it. Then Hatcher suddenly raised an alarm. He thought he saw a Viet Cong soldier in the bushes and opened fire, but it turned out to be a buffalo. The girl started coughing, and the sergeant gave her an aspirin. Max once again asked the sergeant to explain what they were doing. What was really going on here?
She's a VC whore, and we're gonna have a little fun with her.
Max said, "Stop messing with my head. She's just an ordinary peasant girl who was sleeping in her own home." The sergeant pressured the rookie. "We're all brothers in arms. She's a Viet Cong whore. But you, Max, who the hell even are you anymore?" Private Hatcher made the girl carry his backpack. When Clark saw this, he made her carry his pack too. The captive had to walk a long distance barefoot, despite the dangerous jungle terrain. The squad stopped at an abandoned hut. The sergeant decided to set up a command post there. He took 2 men with him on reconnaissance. Diaz asked Max to stand up for him if they ordered him to force himself on the girl. The privates agreed to support each other. Max approached the captive to treat a wound on her back. She looked at him like a frightened animal, but then realized he wouldn't hurt her. The sergeant decided to set the rookie straight. He apologized for snapping earlier and reminded him that out here, they could only rely on each other. Meserve brought Max to the girl and tied her hands. The rookie was supposed to rape her along with the others, but Max turned around and walked away. The sergeant got pissed.
You think you're standing up to me? Ah!
I ain't doing it. No way.
"Maybe he's a fag," someone said. "Everyone else is down to have some fun." The sergeant noticed Max looking at Diaz. "What, are they in this together?" Diaz got scared and said, "No, I'm with everyone. I'm with you guys." The sergeant and the corporal couldn't figure it out. Was Max a queer, or just a chicken shit coward? Or maybe he sympathized with the Viet Cong? "Well then," someone said, "maybe an accident could happen to him. Who gives a shit about some green rookie anyway?" The sergeant says, "Maybe when I'm done with her, I'll take care of you next, then fuck you." Max pointed his weapon at the sergeant, but he didn't even think about being scared. "Is this what you call a weapon?" "No, this is a weapon."
This is a gun. This is for fighting. This is for fun.
The sergeant headed to the hut. He would be first in line. When Max moved, Clark pressed a knife to his throat and sent the private to stand guard. The sergeant ordered Diaz to go second. The torment lasted all night. Max didn't once look toward the hut. In the morning, the squad reached the river. There, they found the enemy. The Viet Cong were definitely up to something. Max and Hatcher were sent to the hut to bring ammunition, and Diaz called for backup. Clark was angry. He wanted to shoot, not guard the prisoner. The corporal decided to leave Max in his place and went to the river with Hatcher. When Max approached to untie the exhausted Vietnamese woman, she panicked and resisted. "Sorry," the polite American said again. The girl was sick with a high fever. The prisoner greedily attacked the crackers. The rapists hadn't even thought to feed their victim. When the sergeant saw Clark next to him, he asked if he was okay in the head. How could he leave Max alone with the prisoner? The corporal had to run back. Max really decided to help the girl escape, but he couldn't go himself, or he would be considered a deserter. However, the Vietnamese woman clung to him, begging him to help her get to her native village. And Max agreed. The two were already moving toward the jungle when Clark caught up with them. He ordered the private to go to the sergeant. The entire squad was sitting in ambush, waiting for the moment to attack the Viet Cong. The girl kept coughing. Clark covered her mouth with his hand and suggested to the sergeant to finish her off, so she wouldn't give away their position. Meserve ordered Max himself to kill the prisoner. Max talked about Brown. He would never take part in such madness. Clark volunteered to stab the girl, but the sergeant ordered Private Hatcher to do it. He also resisted. Then Meserve handed a knife to Diaz. Max asks him not to do it, but he obediently crawls toward the captive. At the very last moment, Max fires into the air, so there is no reason left to kill the girl. A shootout begins. Max is left. Insert. Max was left to cover the squad. The others ran down the road. There was no one left to protect the girl. And while Max looked through the scope of his rifle, Clark Insert struck her in the stomach several times with his huge knife. A combat boat came to help the Americans, and the sergeant realized it was the perfect time to retreat. The badly wounded, bloodied girl stood up and staggered down the road. She no longer understood what was happening around her and just kept moving forward. The sergeant was surprised to see her in front of him. "She's leaving!" Meserve shouted and struck Max in the stomach with the butt of his rifle. The poor girl was shot from 4 barrels and fell off the overpass. At that very moment, combat helicopters arrived and blasted everything around to hell. The Vietnamese boat exploded, which also destroyed the combat boat. The bodies of the Americans floated in the water near the girl's corpse lying on the rocks by the shore. Max regained consciousness high in the sky. He was evacuated by helicopter. The next time he came to, he was in a hospital, awakened by the cries of severely wounded soldiers. At the base, the first thing he did was find his comrade Rowan and told him that they had indeed done it to the poor girl. Clark immediately ran up to Max, interrupted him, and said, "What happened on the battlefield happened. Remember, everyone knows. The guy is worried that now they might get rid of him as a witness, so he needs to report what happened to Lieutenant Riley as soon as possible." But in response to Max's story, the lieutenant told his own. When his wife was giving birth, she wasn't allowed into the delivery room because of the wrong race. She gave birth right there in the emergency room, and he was thrown behind bars because he destroyed the hospital and was about to kill the doctor. They kept him in jail just long enough for his head to clear, and all he wanted was to get back to his wife and child. Then he thought it over. What happened, happened, and there's no point fighting the system. The lieutenant said he would just break up the platoon and send them to 5 different places, and Max needed to relax and forget everything. Max convinces himself that he couldn't have done anything. He couldn't have shot Clark back then, right? Running around nearby are Max and Rowan's completely helpless Private Cherry. He lost his platoon and now doesn't know where to go. The kid clearly ended up in the war by accident. Suddenly, there was an explosion. Everyone fell. Someone stepped on a mine. And that unlucky guy was Private Cherry.
Booby trap! Somebody stepped on the toe popper. All right, let's move it out. Let's get where we're supposed to be.
Who got hit, Sarge?
That boy was bagged and tagged the minute they cut his orders to this place. They should have just shot him at home.
No one was even surprised. He was doomed from the first minutes. Max didn't like that the guy's death was just a joke to them. The closeness of death loosened their hands, and they felt free to do whatever they wanted. Max decided to break the chain of command and went straight to Captain Hill, bypassing Lieutenant Riley. But Riley had already reported everything to him. The captain asked if the private understood that his actions could provoke an international scandal. There was nothing left to help the poor girl.
I'm going to transfer you out of my company, Erickson. That all right with you? I'll get you out of the bush, out of the infantry, any fucking place you want to go, you name it.
The private had to understand that the court would be very lenient. Even if they were convicted, no one would go to prison. Afterwards, they might want revenge. And Max had a wife and child. The captain finally dropped the mask and said that Meserve had actually saved his life. About the girl, well, he had acted too harshly, but Meserve was still a kid, only 20 years old. The captain said angrily, "You want to ruin his life? He saved yours." That evening, someone was watching Max and planned to plant a grenade in the bathroom. It turned out to be Corporal Clark. Drunk Hatcher accidentally gave him away. Dropping his lighter, Max saw a grenade on the floor and managed to jump out of the room at the last moment. Shaking off, he grabbed a shovel, went into the barracks, and struck Clark hard on the head, then told Meserve that no one cared. He told everyone what had happened, but no one gave a damn, so there was no point trying to kill him. In the bar, a stranger sat down next to the drunk Max. The private probably had some problems if he was holding a gun right in front of him. The man was a priest and offered Max a chance to talk. Max told him what the squad had done to the poor village girl, and the priest helped bring the case to light. Soon, the girl's body was found. The captain failed to silence the private, and the case was just beginning.
And is it standard practice for U.S. personnel to have sexual relations with their prisoners and then murder them?
Objection. Overruled.
The prisoner made attempts to give away the position of the squad, sir.
Clark, with a dent on his forehead from the shovel, denies his guilt. People like him and Meserve belong on the battlefield, not here. The dim-witted Hatcher thought Max refused to participate in the crime simply because he wasn't as experienced as the other soldiers. Diaz admits he did it out of fear of being laughed at. Meserve tried to justify himself by saying that he actually helped other Vietnamese. He even gave artificial respiration to one child. Private Diaz was sentenced to 8 years of hard labor. Private Hatcher was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. Corporal Clark was sentenced to life imprisonment in a maximum security prison. Sergeant Meserve was sentenced to 10 years of hard labor. As the criminals walked past Max, he remembered the captain's words about revenge. Then he woke up on a trolley bus. That girl got off, forgetting her scarf. Max returned the forgotten item to the stranger and confessed that she reminded him of someone from a terrible nightmare, and he hopes that nightmare is finally over.